at the Constitutional Court, the ruling yesterday, last Thursday, regarding domestic workers who are now covered by the provisions of the Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act, COIDA. And now they can claim damages for work-related injuries, illnesses, and even death. We join on the line by Nomzamo Zondo, Executive Director at the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, SERI, SERI. Nomzamo, good morning to you. Welcome to the show. Nomzamo, good morning. Okay, we're going to try and get hold of her for some reason or the other. We are having a slight connection problem. But the key issue here is after 26 years of democratic rule, domestic workers employed in private homes are at last being covered by the provisions of COIDA. And this has come about after a long battle because to many, and according to the judge, Margaret Victor, who says that domestic workers are the unsung heroines in this country and globally. Sadly, domestic work as a profession is undervalued and unrecognized, even though they play a central role in our society. And many of us know it because many of us who employ domestic help at home know the value of domestic help. And I see we have got our guest this morning, Nomzamo Zondo, online. Nomzamo, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Inayet. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, wonderful. And just your reaction to the ruling by the Constitutional Court.
It is long overdue, Inayet. Firstly, we don't think it was necessary for domestic workers to litigate this point. In fact, this was what the Minister of Labour and the Competition Commissioner also stated in the court in March, explaining that they accepted that they shouldn't have been excluded to begin with. But I think we are also relieved to know that as of today, any domestic worker injured, any domestic worker who dies will have protection. Of course, we are more elated that even people who were injured or died after April 1994 will be covered. It's really a great win and a great victory for domestic workers.
Now, let's just try and understand, obviously, some of the legalities. And we know that according to the order, this is going to apply retrospectively to the 27th of April, 1994, allowing domestic workers who were previously injured and their families to be able to lodge claims.
Yes. So, in fact, when the matter went before the High Court, in October last year, it was agreed between, so we act for the South African Domestic Services and Allied Workers Union, the daughter of Sylvia Mahlangu, the daughter of Maria Mahlangu, who died in 2012, and the minister. It was agreed that this would be retrospective, which means that any domestic worker who was injured or fell ill during the course of their work can go and submit a claim with the Department of Labour. The one concern is that for many people, some of them have lost their proof of employment. Maybe they might have lost the proof of their injuries. But for those who have those documents, we believe that they will be able to submit claims, and those claims should be successful.
Right. Now, I see one of the points that the judge had made, and the acting judge, Margaret Victor, and this is a telling point, talking about domestic workers as the unsung heroines in this country and globally. And sadly, domestic work as a profession is undervalued and unrecognized, even though they play a central role in our society. Now, this is obviously a very, very telling comment because, although it may seem as if domestic workers are undervalued, but for those who employ them in their homes, know what value they actually bring to their lives, to their families and their homes.
Definitely, Inayet. And in fact, in drafting our press release on the issue, we're calling on those employers to firstly start to comply with their obligations in terms of the Unemployment Insurance Fund, to make sure that domestic workers are protected under UIF, but two, to make sure that they contribute to the COIDA scheme as soon as the department has put in place procedures for them to contribute. Exactly, because what this judgment does, it doesn't only protect domestic workers, it also protects their employers. Because previously, right, before this order on Thursday, your domestic worker could sue you if they are injured at work. So, for instance, in the case that we're dealing with now, the Mahlangu family did actually sue their former employer because of the injury. And what this court order does is protect all employers from those claims and make sure that the fund is responsible for any damages that arise out of workplace injuries or workplace deaths. And we are calling on all employers to comply with their obligations as soon as the Department of Labor advises them how to contribute. And also know the continuing complaints of domestic workers that they are not recognized as employees by their employers. And we are calling on those employers to respect their rights, the rights that have been given to them under the Labor Relations Act, and also to make sure that they engage with them fairly, even in negotiating their workplace contracts.
Yes. Now, I think what is also important and what is critical to understand is from a compliance perspective. And Nomzamo, we know that sometimes these processes can be quite tedious and they be quite cumbersome. And especially when we're talking about domestic workers and domestic help, and sometimes employers don't have the facilities or the expertise from a compliance perspective, and to try and keep it as straightforward and simple, because sometimes these things do get complicated, which makes compliance a bit difficult.
Definitely, and I think there are many organizations that are willing to assist employers who want to comply. So as I've said, SERI acted for Satsawi in this case. Along Satsawi, they had the support of UDOSA, another domestic workers trade union, and even EASWI Domestic Workers Alliance. And all of those organizations, if they're approached by employers who want to comply and don't know how to do it, would willingly advise them of what steps to take to comply. Even in their own advocacy, they've been calling for the Department of Labor to assist domestic worker employers to comply with their obligations. In fact, the organization that I work for, SERI, which brought this case, is busy preparing a domestic employers guide, which would help employers comply with their obligations and, of course, provide for practical steps to make sure that their employees have the necessary contracts and are contributing to the necessary statutory funds.
Well, definitely. I think this obviously will be very useful. It will be very, very helpful to employers, because we know that there are millions of domestic workers that are employed right across the length and breadth of the country. And, working through organizations like yourselves makes a lot of sense.
Definitely, so one of the reason why this sector is so important for our country is that it's the biggest employer of Black women. In fact, you'll be surprised to learn that globally, while the issue of domestic work and the recognition of domestic work is a global problem, but our continent is the largest employer of domestic workers. And in fact, again, the Southern African region is leading in that. And it's important for us in ensuring that there is a recognition. And in fact, it's an opportunity for us to lead globally by making sure that we recognize these rights. And we know that part of the concerns and part of the reason why this work is undervalued is because it's seen as care work. It's seen as work that women should carry out without any assistance. And as women, we should be fighting to make sure this work is properly recognized when it's done by domestic workers, and that it's also properly recognized when it's done personally and privately in the home.
Well, Nomzamo, I'm quite glad that you talk about, us taking the lead, because we've heard of horrific stories from right across the length and breadth of the globe, actually, in terms of domestic workers and how they are being treated, particularly those who are expatriates in countries. And some of these are very, very wealthy countries. And when you hear about slave-like conditions, these are actually horrific. And some of these stories, obviously one cannot even fathom, one cannot even think about that human beings are being treated in that way. So I think, this also obviously augurs well for South Africa, granting the recognition to domestic workers and the value that they bring.
Yes, and I think we must. we must recognize, first of all, even though it took 4 years, but the fact that the Department of Labor made this concession. Yes, they are probably 2 decades late, but it's been done now. And we are calling upon them to show their proper commitment to the recognition of domestic workers by quickly acting to ensure that the employers of domestic workers can contribute to the fund, and by establishing a claims process, or at least a rapid claims process that will assist all the domestic workers who have been waiting for the last 26 years.
What sort of timelines are we looking at, in terms of this whole process being formalized? Have you got any idea?
No, not really, because during the lockdown, we did write to the Department of Labor inviting them to advance their plans. Unfortunately, they did not respond to us. But I would think, and this is just simply a personal opinion, that I think 3 months should be enough. But the court has ordered them to make this available immediately. And I think people who do have claims should be coming forward to the Department of Labor to make sure they start the process as soon as possible.
Well, Nomzamo, thank you very much for that and for your time with us this morning. We wish you all the best, and please take care.
Thank you so much, Inayet. Take care.
Nomzamo Zondo, Executive Director at the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, with us this morning. And this is definitely groundbreaking in terms of the ruling by the court regarding domestic workers and being covered under the COIDA Act.
Discover the Africa of your dreams.